You can spend years giving your energy to the world, trying to meet expectations, trying to be everything for everyone, and still feel like something essential is missing. That missing piece is almost always the same. You haven't learned to love yourself the way you deserve to be loved. Not with ego, not with pride, but with a deep, steady commitment to your own well-being. The kind that becomes the foundation for every meaningful part of your life. Self-love is not a luxury. It's not a soft idea for quiet moments. It's a life skill. It's a form of strength. It's the ability to stand with yourself even when the world misunderstands you, doubts you, or asks you to shrink. And the truth is simple. The moment you finally choose yourself, your life begins to change in ways you could never imagine. This audiobook is your companion on that journey. A journey back to your truth, your peace, and your power. In this audiobook, we will break down the barriers you've built around your heart, uncover the beliefs that have held you back, and rebuild the inner foundation that makes you stronger, calmer, and more confident than ever before. You will learn how to protect your peace, honor your needs, forgive your past, and become someone you trust fully. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about transforming the relationship you have with the one person who never leaves your side, yourself. When that relationship becomes healthy, everything in your life begins to reflect it. Your decisions, your habits, your relationships, your boundaries, your dreams. So take a breath, settle into this moment. You're here because a part of you knows it's time to stop abandoning yourself and start choosing yourself. You're ready to build a life anchored in self-respect and guided by genuine inner love. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Start by returning home to yourself. There comes a point in every person's life when they realize they've been living everywhere except within themselves. You may have been living in expectations, living in pressure, living in the fear of disappointing others, living in the noise of the world, but not living in your own inner home. And that's where this journey truly begins, by returning to the place you've quietly abandoned. Most people don't even realize how far they've drifted. It happens slowly. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You silence your opinions to keep the peace. You ignore your needs because someone else's needs feel louder. You push your feelings aside because you tell yourself, not now, I'll deal with it later. And later becomes months. Later becomes years. Eventually you don't even remember what your authentic voice sounds like. You don't remember what you truly wanted. You don't remember who you were before you became so busy trying to be everything for everyone else. Returning home to yourself means stopping long enough to hear your own heartbeat again, to hear your truth without the static of the world. It means slowing down, even just for a moment, and asking yourself, what do I really feel? What do I really want? What have I been avoiding? These questions may sound simple, but they take courage, they take honesty, and they take a willingness to sit with yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable at first. You see, the relationship you have with yourself is like any other relationship. If you ignore it, it weakens. If you abandon it, it becomes fragile. But if you nurture it, if you listen to it, if you spend time with it, it grows stronger, deeper, more steady. And that strength becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. When you know yourself, really know yourself, decisions become easier, boundaries become clearer, confidence becomes natural, because you're no longer navigating life from a place of confusion or fear. You're navigating it from a place of alignment. Returning home to yourself also means reclaiming the pieces of you that you've been told to hide. Maybe you were taught that your sensitivity was a weakness. Maybe you were taught that your ambition was too much. Maybe you were taught to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay agreeable. And because you wanted acceptance, because you wanted connection, you learned to tuck away the parts of you that felt risky to show. But those parts, those are often the truest parts of who you are, and they don't disappear. They wait. They wait for the day you decide to stop apologizing for yourself and start embracing yourself. They wait for the moment you finally say, "I'm coming back." This chapter is about giving yourself permission to do exactly that, to return, to reconnect, to rediscover. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to fix your entire life in one day. You just need the willingness to turn inward and listen, because deep down, a part of you already knows the way back. A part of you has been trying to speak to you, guide you, remind you of who you were before fear, before doubt, before comparison, before exhaustion carved away your sense of self. And here's something important: returning home to yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. When you're disconnected from yourself, you give to the world from a place of emptiness. But when you're connected to yourself, you give from overflow, from clarity, from strength. You show up better in your relationships, in your work, in your decisions. You become grounded, steady, centered, and people feel the difference. You feel the difference. Think of this as the first step in rebuilding your inner home, sweeping out the expectations that never belonged to you, closing the doors that lead to self-abandonment, and opening the ones that lead to honesty, presence, and peace. You're not trying to become someone new here. You're simply returning to someone you were always meant to be. So take a slow breath, let it settle, and remind yourself, gently but firmly, you deserve to come home. This is where your real transformation begins. Chapter 2. Confront the lies you've believed about your worth. If you want to learn to love yourself more than anything else, you have to start by confronting the myths, the assumptions, and the quiet lies that have shaped how you see yourself. And the truth is, most people are walking around with a distorted sense of worth that didn't even come from inside them. It came from childhood moments, from other people's opinions, from comparisons, from painful experiences, from environments that taught them to question their value instead of recognize it. Some of these lies are so familiar, so deeply woven into your identity, that you may not even notice how often you repeat them. You may not hear yourself whispering, "I'm not enough," but that belief shows up in every fear, every hesitation, every moment you shrink. You may not say out loud, "I don't deserve better," but that thought is there every time you settle for less than what you want. And somewhere along the way, you accepted these beliefs as truth. Not because they were true, but because they were repeated often enough, loudly enough, or painfully enough, that they left a mark. Confronting these lies begins with recognizing that worth is not something you earn. Worth is not something someone else gives you. Worth is not something that increases when you succeed or decreases when you fail. Worth simply is. It's inherent. It's part of you. But life has a way of covering that truth with layers of doubt, insecurity, criticism, and comparison. So your job now is to peel those layers back, to look at the beliefs you've been carrying and ask, where did this come from? Maybe you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where affection or approval was tied to performance. So somewhere inside you, you learned the lie that love must be earned, that acceptance must be earned, that being yourself wasn't enough. You had to prove your value. Or maybe you had experiences where someone spoke to you with cruelty, and you believed them. You believed you weren't attractive enough, smart enough, talented enough, strong enough. You believed their words because they came during vulnerable moments, moments when you trusted them or depended on them. But here's the hard truth. You eventually learn. People often project their own wounds onto others. Their words were a reflection of them, not you. But the wound landed on you anyway. And then there's the comparison trap. One of the biggest sources of self-doubt. You see someone else's success, someone else's beauty, someone else's lifestyle, someone else's confidence, and without even realizing it, you start measuring yourself against a life that isn't yours. You start building your worth around someone else's highlight reel. But comparison doesn't tell you what you're not. It distracts you from who you are, and the lie that forms is simple. Everyone else is ahead. I'm behind. But you're not behind. You're just living a different story, and your story deserves to unfold without being judged against someone else's timeline. When you confront the lies you've believed about your worth, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim control of your inner world. You begin to see that the thoughts you've accepted for years were never facts. They were interpretations. They were unexamined beliefs. And once you expose them to the light, they lose their power. This chapter isn't about blaming your past. It's about freeing yourself from it. It's about taking responsibility for your inner healing. It's about saying, I may have believed these things once, but I don't have to believe them anymore. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not the physical mirror, but the emotional one, and speaking to yourself honestly. You acknowledge the lie, you name it, and then you challenge it. Who told me I'm not enough? Who convinced me that my worth depends on what I achieve? Why did I believe that my value decreases if someone rejects me? When you begin asking these questions, you start seeing cracks in the walls you once thought were solid. You start realizing that some of your most painful beliefs were built on fragile foundations. As you peel back these layers, give yourself compassion. These lies didn't form overnight. They were learned. They were absorbed. And anything learned can be unlearned. What matters now is your willingness to see yourself clearly, without judgment, without distortion, without inherited stories clouding your vision. You are not the sum of your mistakes. You are not defined by your failures. You are not limited by the moments when you didn't know better. Your worth does not rise and fall. It stays. It remains. It belongs to you. And once you confront these lies, truly confront them, you open the door to a life where self-love is not something you chase, but something you live. A life where you finally recognize, deeply and unshakably, that you were worthy long before anyone ever tried to convince you otherwise. Chapter 3. Stop abandoning yourself for approval. There's a moment in every person's life when they have to face an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes, the greatest damage doesn't come from what others do to you. It comes from what you do to yourself in an attempt to keep others happy. And one of the most painful ways people harm themselves is through self-abandonment. You abandon your feelings to keep the peace. You abandon your needs to avoid conflict. You abandon your dreams to meet expectations. You abandon your boundaries because you fear losing love, losing acceptance, losing connection. And after years of doing this, you look in the mirror and realize you've moved so far away from yourself that you hardly recognize who you've become. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. The approval you chase will never compensate for the self-respect you lose. The world will always have more demands, more opinions, more expectations. There will always be someone who disagrees with your choices, someone who wants more from you, someone who doesn't understand you. And if you let every one of those voices dictate your actions, you'll spend your entire life running from conflict, running from disappointment, running from yourself. But the person you can never outrun is you. That's why self-abandonment feels so heavy. That's why it leaves a hollow ache inside you. Because deep down, a part of you knows you betrayed your own truth. Approval feels safe in the moment. It feels comforting. It gives you a temporary sense of belonging. But it comes with a cost. You teach the world that you'll shrink yourself to be accepted. You teach people that your boundaries are flexible. You teach them that your needs come second. And once you set that pattern, it becomes the default. You become the person who carries everyone else's weight while quietly drowning. But loving yourself more than anything else requires a different kind of courage. The courage to stay true to yourself, even if it means disappointing others. Because real self-love is built on honesty. And honesty sometimes asks you to say, no, not today. That doesn't work for me, or this is not who I want to be. You have to understand something deeply. Your worth is not a negotiation. You don't earn it by pleasing others. You don't grow it by collecting approval. Approval is unreliable. It shifts with moods, with circumstances, with changing opinions. But your inner truth, that is steady, that is real, and the more you listen to it, the stronger you become. People may not like it when you stop abandoning yourself. They may resist the new version of you, because the old version made their lives easier. But that discomfort is temporary. The peace you gain from being true to yourself is permanent. Start noticing the subtle moments when you abandon yourself. The tiny hesitations, the forced smiles, the sure no problem when you're already exhausted. The it's fine when it isn't. The times you swallow your truth because you tell yourself it's not worth it. The times you ignore your intuition because you're scared of being judged. Every single one of those moments is a small betrayal, not of others, but of you. And a life built on tiny betrayals eventually collapses. Self-loyalty is the antidote. It means you listen to your feelings even when they're inconvenient. It means you honor your needs even when others disagree. It means you choose yourself, not because you don't care about others, but because you finally care about yourself. And ironically, when you stop abandoning yourself, you become more grounded, more honest, and more whole. Your relationships improve because they're based on truth, not performance. Your confidence improves because it's rooted in self-respect, not approval. You begin to attract people who appreciate your authenticity instead of people who benefit from your silence. You have to decide what matters more, temporary approval or long-term self-respect. One gives you comfort for a moment, the other gives you peace for a lifetime. And that peace comes when you say, with full conviction, I refuse to leave myself behind ever again. That is the moment your life begins to shift. That is the moment self-love becomes real. And that is the moment you start living as someone who values themselves deeply, not because the world approves of you, but because you finally approve of yourself. Chapter 4. Set a standard for how you deserve to be treated. One of the most powerful steps in learning to love yourself more than anything else is understanding this simple truth. People treat you the way you allow them to. Your standards act like the blueprint for every relationship in your life. Friendships, family, work, romance, even casual interactions. When your standards are low, you attract people who take advantage of that. When your standards are unclear, you attract chaos, confusion, and disappointment. But when your standards are high, when they're rooted in self-worth and backed by your actions, your entire world shifts. Because you're no longer asking for respect, you're embodying it. Setting a standard begins with clarity. You can't ask others to treat you well if you don't even know what well looks like for you. So ask yourself, what behavior do I accept that drains me? What treatment have I tolerated that hurt me? What patterns do I keep repeating because I'm afraid to walk away? Most people don't lack self-love because they don't want it. They lack it because they never stopped long enough to define what kind of behavior aligns with the life they want to live. And here's the honest truth you have to face. Your standards are not built by your words. They are built by your actions. You can tell someone 1,000 times that you deserve respect, but if you continue to let disrespect slide, your actions speak louder. You can say you want honesty, but if you stay in places where lies are common, you teach people that dishonesty is acceptable around you. You can claim you value peace, but if you tolerate chaos because you fear losing someone, you show the world that your boundaries are negotiable. And once a boundary becomes negotiable, it stops being a boundary. Setting a standard is not about controlling others. It's about controlling what you accept. It's about saying, this is who I am, this is what I allow, and this is what I will not permit in my life. And once you communicate that, with your behavior, not just your voice, people either rise to meet your standard, or they fall away. Both outcomes are forms of protection. The right people adjust because they value you. The wrong people leave because they can no longer benefit from your silence or your softness. Either way, you win. Sometimes people fear raising their standards because they worry it will make them alone. And yes, raising your standards may remove certain people from your life, but it also creates space for better ones. You can't invite healthy relationships into a life filled with toxic ones. You can't create space for respect while clinging to situations rooted in disrespect. Something has to be released for something greater to arrive. That's not loss, that's alignment. To set a standard, you must first acknowledge your worth. You have to understand that you deserve kindness, honesty, consistency, gentleness, respect, effort, and loyalty. You deserve people who listen when you speak, who value your presence, who do not manipulate your emotions, who do not make you question your sanity, who do not make you beg for the bare minimum. You deserve connections that add to your life, not ones that drain you. But before you ask the world for this, you must ask it from yourself. You can't demand that others treat you better than you treat yourself. Are you speaking to yourself with respect? Are you honoring your feelings? Are you giving your needs real importance? Are you holding yourself accountable? Because the way you treat yourself sets the tone for how others will treat you. When you value yourself, it becomes obvious. You carry yourself differently, you speak differently, you choose differently, and people feel that. They respond to it, they adjust to it. Setting a standard is an act of self-love. It's you saying, I am done accepting less than what aligns with who I am becoming. It's you refusing to remain in environments that make you shrink. It's you deciding that peace matters more than pleasing, authenticity matters more than approval, and self-respect matters more than temporary comfort. And when you do this, when your standards rise, and your tolerance for disrespect falls, your entire life transforms. You stop attracting situations that hurt you. You stop accepting relationships that drain you. You stop settling for versions of yourself that feel small. Instead, you step into a life where the way others treat you matches the way you see yourself. And that is the true power of setting a standard. It teaches the world how to love you by showing the world how you love yourself. Chapter 5. Make self-respect your daily commitment. If you want to love yourself more than anything else, you must begin with a simple, transformative truth. Self-respect is built through the things you do every single day. Not once in a while. Not only when life feels good. Not only when motivation is high. Every day. Self-respect is not something you talk about. It's something you practice. Something you prove to yourself with your actions, your choices, your habits, and your consistency. It's a daily commitment, and it must be treated with the same seriousness and intention you give to the relationships that matter most to you. A lot of people misunderstand self-respect. They think it's about confidence. They think it's about standing tall, or being outspoken, or demanding better from others. But the truth is deeper than that. Self-respect is the quiet agreement you make with yourself, the agreement that says, I will not betray myself today. It's the agreement to keep promises you've made to yourself, even if no one else will know the difference. It's the agreement to show up for your growth, even on the days when comfort feels more tempting. It's the agreement to choose what is right for you over what is easy for you. Think about how you feel when you break promises to yourself. When you say you'll start tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. When you say you'll stop accepting certain behavior, and then you tolerate it again. When you tell yourself you'll make time for your health, your peace, your growth, and then you push it aside for the 100th time. There's a very specific heaviness that comes with that kind of self-betrayal, a quiet shame, a subtle disappointment, a feeling that you've let yourself down. Over time, that heaviness becomes part of your identity, not because you deserve it, but because your daily actions repeated it long enough to become familiar. Now think about the opposite. Think about how you feel when you follow through, even in small ways. When you do the thing you said you would do, when you keep a boundary you set, when you choose discipline over impulse, when you sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Those moments create a different kind of internal shift, a spark of pride, a sense of strength, a feeling of alignment. Each time you follow through, even just once, you reinforce the belief that you can trust yourself, and trust leads to respect. This is how self-respect is built, not by grand gestures, but by repeated moments of integrity. Making self-respect your daily commitment also means choosing behaviors that support your future, not undermine it. It means letting go of habits that sabotage your peace or your progress. It means recognizing that every choice is a vote for the person you are becoming. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do everything right, but you do have to be honest with yourself. You do have to choose the path that aligns with your growth, more often than you choose the path that numbs your discomfort. You do have to show yourself that your goals matter, that your boundaries matter, that your inner voice matters. And let's be clear, self-respect isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it means saying no when you want to say yes. Sometimes it means walking away when you wish you could stay. Sometimes it means doing the hard thing, the disciplined thing, when your emotions are begging you for the easy way out. Sometimes it means sitting in silence instead of running to distraction. Sometimes it means being honest with yourself about why you're doing what you're doing. Growth is rarely comfortable, but it is always worth it. You cannot separate self-love from self-respect. They depend on each other. When you lose respect for yourself, your love weakens. When your love weakens, your confidence fades. When your confidence fades, your boundaries crumble. And when your boundaries crumble, your entire life becomes shaped by other people's desires instead of your own. But when you make self-respect a daily commitment, you rebuild everything. Your sense of identity, your emotional strength, your confidence, and your stability. You deserve to live a life where you trust yourself deeply. You deserve a life where your behavior reflects your worth. You deserve a life where you don't abandon your responsibilities to yourself. And that begins with one small, powerful decision each day: to treat your promises to yourself as sacred, to treat your growth as essential, to treat your future as valuable. When you make self-respect your daily commitment, you are telling yourself and the world that you are no longer available for anything that makes you shrink. You are only available for the life that makes you rise. Chapter 6. Learn to give yourself the compassion you give others. If you're like most people, you're far more compassionate with others than you are with yourself. You forgive others faster. You understand their mistakes more easily. You comfort them in their failures. You uplift them when they fall, and you offer gentle words when they feel small. But when it comes to you, you're harder, sharper, less patient, less forgiving. You carry expectations that you would never place on another human being, yet you believe you should somehow rise to them flawlessly. And when you don't, you punish yourself in silence. But here's a truth you need to hear. You cannot love yourself until you learn to treat yourself with the same compassion you already give so freely to others. Self-love doesn't grow through perfection. It grows through understanding, through patience, through kindness. It grows when you stop judging yourself for being human and start holding your own heart with gentleness. Ask yourself honestly, why do you allow others to be imperfect, yet you refuse to allow the same for yourself? Why do you expect others to make mistakes, yet you punish yourself for every misstep? Why do you encourage others to rest, yet guilt yourself when you slow down? Somewhere along the way, you learn to extend compassion outward, but not inward. Maybe you thought being hard on yourself would make you stronger. Maybe you thought self-criticism was the only way to improve. Maybe you believed that being gentle with yourself was weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Compassion makes you resilient. Compassion makes you stronger. Compassion gives you the power to rise again after falling, not with shame, but with clarity. Compassion is not an excuse. It's not about letting yourself off the hook. It's about acknowledging your humanity. It's about recognizing that growth takes time, that healing takes time, that building a new life takes time. And during that time, you will make mistakes. You will fall into old patterns. You will slip back into habits you're trying to break. You will doubt yourself. You will question your progress. None of that means you're failing. It means you're human. It means you're learning. It means you're growing. When you give yourself compassion, you create space for healing. You give your heart room to breathe, instead of suffocating it under pressure. You give your mind permission to try again, instead of drowning it in criticism. You give your spirit strength to rise, instead of weakening it with shame. And the more compassion you show yourself, the more naturally you begin to rise. Think about how you speak to yourself after a mistake. Would you speak that way to someone you love? Would you tell them they're worthless? Would you tell them they're behind? Would you remind them of every failure they've ever had? Of course not. You would comfort them. You would help them see the bigger picture. You would remind them that one setback doesn't define them. You would remind them of their strength, their potential, their worth. So why do you deny yourself that same kindness? Learning self-compassion requires intentional practice. It requires catching the voice inside you that criticizes and replacing it with one that guides. It requires asking yourself, in moments of struggle, what would I say to a friend right now? And then saying those words to yourself, not because you're weak, not because you're fragile, but because you deserve the same care you give to others. Self-compassion also means treating your progress with gentleness. Maybe you didn't get everything done today. Maybe you made the wrong choice. Maybe you're still healing from something that happened years ago. Maybe you're growing slower than you hoped. That's okay. You don't need to rush your evolution. You don't need to force yourself into unrealistic timelines. The journey is not about speed, it's about alignment. It's about becoming the person you want to be, step by step, moment by moment, day by day. And here's something powerful. When you begin practicing compassion with yourself, your life begins to change. Your internal world softens. Your emotional strength increases. Your confidence grows because you're no longer tearing yourself down. You start to feel safer within your own mind. You start to trust yourself more. You stop living in constant fear of making mistakes, because you know you won't attack yourself for them. That freedom opens doors. That freedom creates peace. That freedom allows real love, deep love, to take root inside you. Remember this, you are not your past. You are not your flaws. You are not your mistakes. You are a human being, learning, growing, transforming, and you deserve compassion along the way. When you finally learn to give yourself the gentleness you've been giving to the world, you take your first true step toward loving yourself fully. Compassion is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the soil in which self-love grows, and the moment you embrace it, your entire life begins to shift. Chapter 7. Heal the parts of you you've been afraid to face. Every person carries wounds they don't talk about, wounds from childhood, from heartbreak, from rejection, from disappointment, from moments where life felt heavier than they were ready for. And because those wounds hurt, because they feel uncomfortable, most people avoid them. They bury them under distractions. They mask them with busyness. They run from them by staying overly productive, overly helpful, overly available to everyone except themselves. But the painful truth is this: anything you avoid will continue to control you. Healing can never happen in the dark. It requires your attention, your honesty, and your willingness to face what you've been running from. Healing is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront parts of yourself that you've tried to outgrow without ever acknowledging. It asks you to look at the moments that shaped you, not to blame but to understand. It asks you to revisit memories you'd rather forget, not to reopen the pain, but to release the hold they still have on you. Healing is not about reliving the wound, it's about reclaiming the power you lost to it. Take a moment and ask yourself, what part of me have I been avoiding? Is it the part that feels unworthy of love? The part that still carries guilt from a mistake you made years ago? The part that still fears rejection? The part that feels like you're never enough? You may have convinced yourself that ignoring these feelings makes them less real, but avoidance never dissolves pain. It only deepens it. What you avoid grows heavier. What you face grows lighter. Healing requires honesty. It means admitting that something hurt you. It means admitting that certain experiences shaped your behavior, your choices, your relationships. It means acknowledging that some of your habits are not habits at all. They are coping mechanisms. You're not overthinking. You're trying to protect yourself. You're not too emotional. You've been holding in feelings for years. You're not hard to love. You learned to keep your guard up because the people who should have nurtured you didn't know how. Healing begins when you stop blaming yourself for wounds you did not choose. But healing also requires responsibility. You may not be responsible for what happened to you, but you are responsible for what you do with it now. You are responsible for breaking the cycles. You are responsible for confronting the patterns that keep repeating. You are responsible for choosing the life you want instead of the one your wound taught you to expect. Healing doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It means you stop letting your pain dictate your future. One of the biggest blocks to healing is the fear of judgment, not from others but from yourself. You fear that if you look too closely at your pain, you'll discover something wrong with you. But pain doesn't reveal your weaknesses. It reveals your humanity. It reveals your resilience. It reveals your need for compassion, not criticism. When you look at your wounds with shame, they deepen. When you look at them with understanding, they begin to loosen their grip. A powerful step in healing is forgiveness, not of others, but of yourself. Forgive yourself for the times you stayed too long. Forgive yourself for the times you didn't know better. Forgive yourself for the ways you coped when you were overwhelmed. Forgive yourself for carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. Self-forgiveness is not letting yourself off the hook. It's letting yourself move forward. You can't build a beautiful future if you keep punishing yourself for a past you no longer live in. Healing also requires patience. It will not happen all at once. Some days you'll feel strong and centered. Other days you'll feel fragile. Some days you'll make progress. Other days you'll feel like you're slipping backward. But healing is not linear. Growth rarely is. What matters is that you keep showing up for yourself. What matters is that you choose to face the discomfort instead of hiding from it. And here's something you need to remember. Every healed wound becomes a source of strength. Every part of you that you face with courage becomes part of your power. What once made you feel broken becomes the reason you rise differently, more grounded, more aware, more compassionate, more complete. When you begin healing the parts of yourself you've been afraid to face, you open the door to a deeper kind of self-love, the kind that doesn't depend on perfection, but on truth. You begin living from a place of wholeness instead of wounding, and that is the moment you stop surviving your past and start creating your future. Chapter 8. Release the past versions of yourself you've outgrown. There comes a time in your life when you must look at the person you used to be and say, "Thank you, but I can't stay there anymore." Growth requires release, not rejection, not hatred, not shame, release. Because the truth is, you are not who you were 5 years ago, or even 1 year ago, or even a month ago. You have learned, you have stretched, you have endured, you have evolved. But if you keep tying yourself to old identities, old stories, old mistakes, old habits, and old fears, you will keep living a life that no longer fits the person you are becoming. Most people struggle with self-love because they're still carrying versions of themselves that were built for survival, not fulfillment. Maybe you're still holding on to the person you had to be during your hardest seasons, the one who stayed quiet to avoid conflict, the one who dimmed their light to fit in, the one who pretended not to care, the one who believed they didn't deserve more. These versions of you were not failures, they were protectors. They helped you navigate storms you didn't know how to navigate. But those storms are no longer here. The danger is gone. The patterns are outdated, yet the identity remains, unless you choose to let it go. Releasing your past self means acknowledging that you've outgrown certain behaviors and mindsets. Maybe you've outgrown people-pleasing. Maybe you've outgrown saying yes when your entire body wants to say no. Maybe you've outgrown relationships that drain you, conversations that numb you, or environments that shrink you. Growth is not just about who you're becoming, it's also about who you're no longer willing to be. But sometimes, the hardest version of yourself to release is the one defined by past mistakes. You replay old moments and punish yourself for decisions you made when you were less aware, less healed, less mature. You carry guilt like it's a responsibility, and shame like it's a permanent part of your identity. But holding on to old mistakes doesn't make you wise, it makes you stuck. You don't become better by reliving regret. You become better by learning from it and moving forward. The past version of you didn't fail you, they taught you. They prepared you. They did the best they could with the awareness they had at the time. And now, with new awareness, you choose differently. To release old versions of yourself, you must first identify the stories you've kept repeating. Stories like, I'm not good enough. I always ruin things. I can't change. I'm not the type of person who succeeds. I don't belong. Or I'm too damaged. These stories may feel familiar. But familiarity is not the same as truth. They became part of your identity because you repeated them long enough. And the moment you stop repeating them, they start losing their power. Release also requires self-honesty. You can't hold on to a version of yourself and still claim you want a new life. You can't build confidence while clinging to insecurity. You can't build peace while holding on to chaos. You can't build a healthy self-image while constantly reminding yourself of who you were at your lowest. A new life demands a new self-concept, and a new self-concept demands letting go. Some people fear releasing their past self because they think it erases everything they've lived through. But releasing is not forgetting, it's redefining. You take the lessons, the strength, the wisdom, the resilience, and you let go of the heaviness, the shame, the guilt, the fear. You honor the journey without dragging the weight of it into every new chapter. And here's something powerful. The moment you release the past versions of yourself, you create emotional and mental space for a new identity to grow. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to trust yourself more deeply. You begin to act like someone who deserves love, peace, respect, and stability. You stop living through old patterns and start living through intention. Letting go feels like loss at first, but it is actually liberation. You're not abandoning yourself, you're freeing yourself. You're letting old versions rest, so that the current version, the wiser, stronger, more aware version, can finally breathe. You honor your past by refusing to let it limit your future. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to become someone completely different from who you once were. And the moment you embrace that truth, you release the emotional weight that has held you hostage for years. That is how you step into a life that reflects who you truly are. Not who you used to be, but who you are finally ready to become. Chapter 9. Choose habits that honor your future self. If you truly want to love yourself more than anything else, you must make decisions today that the future version of you will thank you for. Self-love is not just emotional, it's practical. It's built through choices, patterns, and daily behaviors that either move you closer to the life you want or pull you deeper into the life you're trying to grow out of. And one of the most powerful ways to show your self-love is by choosing habits that honor your future, not just your present feelings. Most people live in a cycle of habits that comfort their current emotions but sabotage their long-term happiness. You procrastinate because you're tired. You stay up late scrolling because you're overwhelmed. You tolerate unhealthy relationships because you're lonely. You break your own boundaries because you don't want conflict. And though these choices soothe the moment, they don't support your future. In fact, they often make the future harder. Honoring your future self means thinking beyond the feeling you have today. It means asking yourself, what will my life look like if I continue these habits for another year, another 5 years? Most people never ask that question, because if they did, the answer would push them toward change. Your habits are not random. They are shaping your destiny. Every repeated action becomes a brick in the foundation of who you are becoming. Choosing habits that honor your future self does not require perfection. It requires intention. It requires choosing the long-term benefit over short-term comfort. It requires reminding yourself that you deserve a life you are proud of, even if it takes discipline to build it. Growth is not about sudden transformation. It's about consistent choices that add up over time. Think about the habits that drain your energy. Think about the ones that keep you stuck. Think about the ones that bring temporary relief but long-term regret. Each of these habits is a message to your future self. A message that says, figure it out later, or clean up the mess I'm creating. But imagine the opposite. Imagine establishing habits that give your future self ease, strength, clarity, and joy. That is the real power of honoring your future. Start with small habits, the kind that seem insignificant but reshape your life from the inside out. A few minutes of reflection in the morning, a limit on the people who drain your energy, a commitment to move your body, even gently. A routine that protects your sleep. A rule about the kind of conversations you will or won't engage in. A moment to breathe before reacting. A decision to stop breaking promises to yourself. These may feel small, but compounded over time, they transform you. A powerful part of this process is understanding that discipline is not punishment. Discipline is a form of self-love. It's choosing the life you want over the impulses that keep you stagnant. It's choosing habits that align with your highest self, rather than your tired self, your scared self, or your unhealed self. And yes, there will be days when you don't feel like doing the things that serve you. But the goal isn't perfection, it's commitment, it's consistency. It's showing up even when it's hard, because you know the future version of you deserves that effort. Choosing habits that honor your future also means letting go of habits that belong to your past. Habits built from fear, habits built from insecurity, habits built from old wounds, habits you adopted just to cope, not to grow. You cannot build a new life on the foundation of old patterns. You must decide, consciously, which habits get to stay and which ones must go. Remember this, your future self is not a stranger. They are you, wiser, stronger, more grounded, more connected, more fulfilled. And everything you do today affects that version of you. Every time you choose a healthy habit, you're sending that future version strength. Every time you choose alignment over impulse, you're giving them peace. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're building a life they will thank you for. The greatest gift you can give yourself is a life that reflects your highest potential. And that begins with habits, the silent architects of your future. You deserve a future filled with peace, success, joy, and self-respect. Choose the habits today that will take you there. Chapter 10. Surround yourself with people who respect your evolution. As you grow, as you heal, as you begin to love yourself in deeper and more honest ways, you will notice something very clearly. Not everyone around you will grow with you. Not everyone will celebrate your evolution. Not everyone will understand the shifts you're making. And that's okay, because this chapter of your life requires something essential: choosing relationships that honor who you are becoming, not just who you used to be. Many people stay stuck in old patterns because they're surrounded by people who only recognize their old identity. People who still expect them to stay small. People who are comfortable with the version of them that was less confident, more accommodating, easier to manipulate, easier to control, easier to overlook. As you grow, you disrupt those dynamics. You begin asking for more. You begin saying no. You begin asserting boundaries. You begin protecting your peace. And those changes can make certain people uncomfortable, but their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your evolution is, you cannot build a life of self-love while staying in environments that contradict your growth. You cannot expect to rise while surrounding yourself with people who pull you back down. You cannot expect peace while spending your time with those who thrive on chaos. You cannot expect self-respect while staying close to people who don't respect you. The company you keep shapes your self-perception more than you realize. Take a moment and think about the people in your life. Who drains your energy? Who leaves you doubting yourself? Who minimizes your feelings? Who mocks your goals? Who treats your boundaries like suggestions instead of expectations? These people do not belong in the future you are building, and you must recognize the courage required to let them go, not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of self-preservation. Now think about the opposite. The people who encourage you, who check on you, who listen without judgment, who celebrate your progress, who accept your boundaries without taking them personally. These people are your growth environment. They respect the person you are becoming. They don't cling to old versions of you. They don't guilt you for choosing yourself. They don't punish you for leveling up. They see your evolution as something beautiful, not something threatening. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your evolution means choosing relationships that reflect your self-love. You deserve people who communicate honestly, not people who manipulate. You deserve people who want to see you shine, not people who compete with your light. You deserve people who bring out your calm, not people who constantly trigger your stress. You deserve people who value your presence, not people who treat you as an option. And here's something important. You do not have to explain your growth to anyone. You do not need approval to change your life. You do not need permission to evolve. Anyone who truly respects you will also respect your evolution. Anyone who truly cares for you will adapt to the new boundaries you set. Anyone who truly values you will celebrate your healing, not question it. But sometimes, letting go won't be voluntary. Sometimes people walk away because you're no longer easy for them to control. Sometimes they distance themselves because your growth exposes their stagnation. Sometimes they leave because your strength highlights their fears. And while losing people can hurt, losing yourself is far more painful. When someone exits your life because you are becoming healthier, stronger, or more self-respecting, understand this truth: their departure is part of your alignment. Surrounding yourself with people who respect your evolution also means becoming that kind of person yourself. Be the friend who listens, not the one who judges. Be the partner who supports, not the one who restricts. Be the family member who encourages growth, not the one who tries to hold others to their past. When you embody respect for others' evolution, you naturally attract people who embody the same. As you evolve, your circle will shift, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. Don't fear that shift. Welcome it. Growth will always reveal who truly belongs in your life. And the ones who remain, the ones who match your energy, honor your boundaries, respect your vision, and uplift your spirit. Those are the people who help you rise higher than you could ever rise alone. Remember this, you become like the people you surround yourself with. Choose wisely. Surround yourself with people who respect your evolution, and your evolution will accelerate. Surround yourself with people who see your worth, and you will begin to see it more clearly too. Surround yourself with people who love you in your growth, and you will learn to love yourself more deeply than ever before. Chapter 11. Build a life that doesn't betray your needs. There is a quiet truth most people never learn until life forces them to face it. You can love yourself deeply, you can set boundaries, you can heal your wounds. But if the life you build on the outside is not aligned with your needs on the inside, you will always feel out of place in your own world. Self-love cannot survive in an environment that contradicts it. Your needs matter, not someday, not when things calm down, not when others approve, but right now. And building a life that honors those needs is one of the greatest acts of self-respect you will ever perform. Too many people live in lives that betray them. They stay in relationships that drain them because they fear loneliness. They stay in jobs that suffocate their spirit because they fear uncertainty. They keep habits that sabotage their peace because they fear change. They pretend they don't need rest because they fear being judged. And slowly, without even realizing it, they build a life that looks full on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. A life that is busy, but not meaningful. Loud, but not fulfilling. Impressive, but not aligned. Building a life that doesn't betray your needs begins with understanding those needs. Not the version of your needs you've been taught to prioritize, but the honest ones, the needs you've ignored because you thought they were inconvenient, or too much, or not acceptable. What do you truly need in order to feel grounded? What do you need to feel emotionally safe? What do you need to feel fulfilled? What do you need to feel respected? What do you need to feel like yourself? These questions are not selfish, they are essential, because your needs are the blueprint of your well-being. When you honor them, you thrive. When you ignore them, you suffer quietly. And the suffering doesn't always show up as sadness. Sometimes it shows up as irritability, exhaustion, restlessness, or a feeling of constantly being out of sync with your own life. Part of honoring your needs is understanding that you cannot build a peaceful life around chaotic people. You cannot build a meaningful life around meaningless routines. You cannot build a healthy life around unhealthy habits. No matter how hard you try, you cannot build alignment out of misalignment. Something will always feel off, because your needs are signals, and when you ignore them, the signals only get louder. Start by examining the areas of your life where you feel the most tension. Are you giving too much of yourself to people who give you very little in return? Are you sacrificing your mental health for obligations you no longer believe in? Are you forcing yourself into responsibilities that don't align with your values? These are the places where your life is betraying your needs, and these are the places where change must happen. Building a life that doesn't betray your needs also means choosing rest when you need rest, choosing silence when you need silence, choosing space when you need space, choosing honesty when you need honesty, choosing support when you need support. You are not meant to do everything alone. You are not meant to abandon your emotional or physical well-being for the sake of appearing strong. You are not meant to pretend you're fine when you're struggling inside. Real strength is built from honoring your needs, not suppressing them. And sometimes honoring your needs means letting go. letting go of people who refuse to meet you halfway, letting go of environments that keep you stressed, letting go of habits that drain your energy, letting go of roles you've outgrown, letting go of expectations that no longer make sense for who you are becoming. Letting go is not loss, it is alignment. You cannot hold on to everything and still expect to rise. As you begin to build your life around your needs, something beautiful happens. You feel more at home within yourself. Decisions become clearer, relationships become healthier, your mind becomes quieter, your heart becomes lighter. You stop waking up with that feeling of being overwhelmed before the day even begins. You stop apologizing for needing things that everyone needs: peace, space, rest, respect, safety, authenticity. Your needs are not unreasonable. They are not burdens. They are not weaknesses. They are the indicators of what allows you to thrive. And building a life that meets those needs is not only an act of self-love, it is an act of wisdom, because the life you build is the life you must live. And you deserve a life that fits you, supports you, and strengthens you. A life that reflects the person you're becoming, not the person you were forced to be. When you finally build a life that doesn't betray your needs, you stop surviving. You start living. You start breathing differently. You start choosing differently. You start loving yourself in a way you never have before. Not in theory, not in words, but in action. And that is the life you deserve. Chapter 12. Protect your peace, like your life depends on it. There is a moment in everyone's life when they finally realize that peace is not something you stumble into, it's something you build, something you build, something you build, something you refuse to negotiate. And until you learn to protect your peace, truly protect it, you will always feel like life is heavier than it needs to be. Peace is not the absence of problems. Peace is the absence of unnecessary chaos, unnecessary noise, unnecessary stress, unnecessary people, and unnecessary battles. Peace is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are no longer available for anything that steals your emotional stability. Most people don't lose their peace all at once. It slips away slowly, a little at a time. A few small compromises here and there, a few unnecessary arguments, a few obligations you didn't want to take, a few people who drain your energy that you keep letting back in, a few situations you stay in, even though they exhaust you. And before you know it, your heart is crowded, your mind is loud, and your spirit feels worn out. Not because life is cruel, but because you haven't learned to protect the spaces within you. Protecting your peace begins with recognizing what disturbs it. Who leaves you feeling anxious after every conversation? What responsibilities drain your spirit more than they contribute to your growth? What habits create mental clutter? What environments make you tense? Your peace is precious, and anything that consistently disrupts it deserves to be questioned and often released. One of the biggest threats to your peace is overcommitment. Saying yes because you don't want to disappoint people. Saying yes because you want to be liked. Saying yes because you feel guilty saying no. But every unnecessary yes you give to others becomes a silent no toward yourself. Protecting your peace requires learning to say no without explaining, without apologizing, without overthinking. No is a complete sentence, and using it wisely is a powerful act of self-love. Another threat to your peace is engaging in battles that don't matter. Not every disagreement requires your energy. Not every criticism deserves your response. Not every comment needs your attention. Some people argue not to understand but to dominate. Some people provoke because they crave chaos. Some people criticize because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Protecting your peace means walking away from arguments that do nothing but drain your spirit. It means choosing silence over proving a point. It means allowing people to misunderstand you because you no longer need validation to feel grounded. Protecting your peace also requires guarding your mental space. What you consume matters, not just food but content, conversations and energy. If you constantly surround yourself with negativity, drama, comparison or fear, it will shape the way you see yourself and the world. Protect your peace by choosing better input, uplifting voices, supportive people, calming environments, inspiring material. What surrounds you shapes you. And here's something many people overlook: your peace is compromised when you ignore your inner signals. When your body feels tense, when your intuition feels uneasy, when your mind feels overwhelmed, these are warnings. These are boundaries your soul is trying to set. But if you push through every feeling, if you silence every signal, if you keep going even when your heart is saying slow down, you are betraying yourself. Protecting your peace means honoring your internal cues. If something feels wrong, listen. If something feels heavy, pause. If something feels misaligned, reconsider. Protecting your peace also means removing access from people who take advantage of your kindness. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to explain anything to them. You simply need to distance yourself from those who consistently disrespect your time, your emotions, your boundaries, or your energy. Some people bring storms with them wherever they go, and you have worked too hard on yourself to keep standing in the rain. As you begin to protect your peace more fiercely, you will notice a shift. You will become calmer. Your decisions will become clearer. Your days will feel lighter. You will no longer wake up with a knot in your chest or go to bed with an overactive mind. You will feel more present, more grounded, more connected to yourself. You will start to experience life through the lens of stability rather than stress. And people may not always understand. Some will call you distant. Some will say you've changed. Some will wonder why you no longer give them unlimited access. But that's okay. Growth is often misunderstood by those who benefit from your stagnation. Protecting your peace may cost you certain relationships, but it will give you back your life. And that is a price worth paying. Your peace is your power. It fuels your clarity, your confidence, your creativity, your emotional stability, your self-worth. When you protect it, you protect the strongest version of yourself. And when you become that version, your entire life transforms. Protect your peace like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Chapter 13. Strengthen your mind against self-criticism and doubt. One of the greatest battles you will ever fight is the one that happens quietly inside your own mind. Not against other people's opinions, not against external challenges, but against the voice within you that doubts your worth, questions your choices, and criticizes your every move. That voice, often shaped by old wounds, old failures, and old fears, can become so familiar that you mistake it for truth. But if you want to love yourself more than anything else, you must learn to train your mind, strengthen your inner world, and take back control from the patterns that sabotage your peace. Self-criticism often feels like responsibility, like discipline, like honesty. You tell yourself you're just trying to improve, or keeping yourself accountable. But there is a difference between accountability and cruelty. Accountability pushes you forward. Self-cruelty keeps you stuck. Accountability says, here's what you can do better next time. Self-cruelty says, you will never get it right. And for far too long, you have been speaking to yourself in a way you would never speak to another person. To strengthen your mind, you first need to become aware of your internal dialogue. Notice how you speak to yourself in the quiet moments, after a mistake, after a setback, after someone criticizes you, after you feel insecure. Notice the tone, notice the harshness, notice the assumptions you make about yourself. You cannot change a voice you refuse to acknowledge. Awareness is step one. Then once you become aware, you must challenge that voice. Ask yourself, is what I'm saying to myself actually true? Or is it something I learned during a difficult season of my life? Something someone taught me? Something I assumed because I was hurting? Most self-doubt is not rooted in reality. It's rooted in fear. Most self-criticism is not grounded in facts. It's grounded in stories you've told yourself so many times that they feel real. Strengthening your mind requires rewriting those stories. You don't erase them, you replace them. When the voice of doubt says, "You're not enough," you respond with, "I am learning, I am growing, I am becoming." When the voice of criticism says, "You always fail," you respond with, "I have succeeded more times than I give myself credit for." When the voice of insecurity says, "What if you're wrong?" you respond with, "What if I'm capable of more than I think?" You train your mind the same way you train a muscle: repetition, consistency, intention. Another powerful part of strengthening your mind is choosing what you give your attention to. Your mind feeds on whatever you consume. If you're constantly absorbing negativity, comparison, drama, or discouragement, your internal world will reflect that. But if you feed your mind inspiration, clarity, creativity, encouragement, and learning, your internal voice naturally becomes kinder and stronger. You become a product of what you repeatedly expose yourself to. You also strengthen your mind by practicing emotional neutrality, learning that every feeling is not a fact, and every thought is not the truth. Feelings fluctuate, thoughts come and go. You do not have to believe everything you think. You do not have to act on every emotion. You can observe your thoughts without becoming controlled by them. You can feel your emotions without being defined by them. This is mental strength, the ability to pause before reacting, to question before accepting, to choose your response rather than being driven by impulse. Another essential part of mental strength is letting go of perfection. Perfection is an impossible standard that convinces you you're failing even when you're growing. It tells you any progress is not enough. It convinces you something is wrong with you because you didn't get everything right the first time. But life is not measured by perfection. It is measured by persistence. The goal is not to become flawless. The goal is to become resilient. Resilience comes from showing up even after you fall. It comes from forgiving yourself quickly. It comes from adjusting, trying again, and treating yourself with the same patience you extend to others. As you strengthen your mind, you will notice a shift. Doubt loses its power. Criticism softens. You begin to trust yourself more. You begin to believe in yourself more. You stop overthinking every decision. You stop replaying every mistake. You stop questioning your worth based on temporary experiences. You become your own source of stability rather than your own source of stress. Strengthening your mind does not mean eliminating all doubt or negativity. It means refusing to let those thoughts control your life. It means rising above the mental patterns that once held you back. It means becoming the kind of person who supports themselves instead of sabotaging themselves. When your mind becomes your ally, not your enemy, self-love becomes natural, peace becomes possible, and your life begins to expand in ways you never thought it could. Chapter 14. Celebrate your progress without waiting for perfection. One of the quietest but most damaging habits people develop is the inability to acknowledge their own growth. You move through life achieving small victories, breaking old patterns, healing wounds, becoming more aware, more grounded, more intentional, yet you dismiss it all because it isn't perfect, it isn't big enough, it isn't what you imagined in your ideal timeline. You overlook the progress you've made because you're too focused on the progress you haven't made yet, and nothing will drain your spirit faster than treating your journey like it's never enough. But here's a truth many people never learn. Self-love grows when you recognize your progress, not when you achieve perfection. Perfection is unreachable. It's a moving target, an illusion, a standard no one ever truly meets. But progress is real. Progress is measurable. Progress is meaningful. And progress is something you experience every time you take one small step in the right direction. Celebrating your progress doesn't mean settling. It doesn't mean lowering your ambition. It doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect. It means acknowledging that you're moving forward, even if slowly, even if imperfectly, even if you're not where you want to be yet. Growth is not defined by speed, it's defined by direction. And as long as you're moving toward a better version of yourself, you're succeeding. Think about how you treat others when they're trying. When a child takes one step, you celebrate. When a friend starts a new habit, you encourage them. When someone you care about tries again, after failing, you applaud their courage. But when it comes to your own life, your own healing, your own journey, you often respond with criticism instead of celebration. Why? Because you've convinced yourself that perfection is the only milestone worth acknowledging. That's not growth. That's self-sabotage. To celebrate your progress, you must first learn to identify it. You must pay attention to the small shifts that signal growth. Maybe you paused before reacting when you normally would have exploded. Maybe you said no to something that drained you. Maybe you walked away from a toxic conversation. Maybe you rested instead of pushing yourself to exhaustion. Maybe you spoke up for yourself. Maybe you admitted you were hurt instead of hiding it. Maybe you showed yourself compassion. These small choices, these tiny acts of alignment, are evidence that you are changing, evolving, strengthening. Celebration is not about ego, it's about reinforcement. When you acknowledge your progress, you reinforce healthy patterns. You give your mind proof that change is happening. You strengthen the belief that you're capable, and that belief fuels even more growth. Self-love expands when you feed it proof of your evolution. Waiting for perfection, on the other hand, does the opposite. It delays your joy. It steals your motivation. It convinces you that you're always behind. It makes you feel like nothing you do is good enough. And when you operate from not enough, you eventually stop trying. You shrink, quit, or burn out. Not because you failed, but because you ignored the progress that was already happening. Celebrating your progress also means being kinder to the version of you that is learning. Learning is messy. It requires trial and error. It requires making mistakes. It requires repeating lessons until they stick. The fact that you are learning at all is something worth celebrating. Think about how many times you could have given up, but didn't. Think about how many days you've pushed through emotional heaviness. Think about all the silent battles you've fought without recognition. You deserve credit for simply continuing. Don't let comparison steal your celebration. You may not be where someone else is, but you're not supposed to be. Their path is not your path. Their timing is not your timing. Their strengths, struggles, opportunities and challenges are different from yours. Compare your progress only to your past self, not to someone else's highlight reel. Celebrating your progress doesn't require a big gesture. It can be as simple as acknowledging the step, telling yourself, "I'm proud of me," writing down what you did well today, taking a moment to breathe in gratitude for the small shift you made. These acts may seem minor, but they rewire your self-perception. They help you see yourself not as someone who is constantly behind, but as someone who is steadily becoming better. And here's the beautiful thing: when you start celebrating your progress, your life becomes lighter. You feel encouraged instead of discouraged. You feel hopeful instead of overwhelmed. You feel capable instead of defeated. You stop rushing toward an imaginary point of perfection and start appreciating the journey you're actually living. The truth is simple: you are becoming, you are evolving, you are growing, and you deserve to acknowledge every step of that journey, not just the perfect ones. Celebrate your progress. Celebrate your effort. Celebrate your resilience. Celebrate the fact that you are trying. because trying means you haven't given up on yourself, and that alone is worth celebrating. Chapter 15. Become the kind of person you're proud to love. There is a turning point in every self-love journey when you stop thinking about who you used to be, stop worrying about who others expect you to be, and begin asking a far more powerful question: who do I want to become? Not for validation, not to impress anyone, but for you, for the version of you who deserves a life built on authenticity, strength, peace, and purpose. Loving yourself more than anything else ultimately leads you here, to the commitment of becoming someone you are proud to live with every single day. Becoming someone you're proud to love doesn't mean becoming perfect. It doesn't mean eliminating every flaw or fixing every challenge overnight. It means becoming someone whose choices align with your values, someone who stands by their truth, someone who treats themselves with dignity, someone who doesn't run from growth, even when growth is uncomfortable. You cannot always control what happens in your life, but you can choose the kind of person you are within it. And the first step toward becoming this person is honesty, honest reflection, honest intention, honest action. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I admire? How do they carry themselves? How do they speak to themselves? How do they respond when challenges appear? These questions are not about comparison. They are about clarity. They help you sculpt a vision of the person you want to be. Someone strong but gentle, ambitious but grounded, loving but self-respecting, compassionate but firm. Someone who holds themselves to standards that match the life they want to live. Becoming someone you're proud to love requires consistency, not dramatic bursts of change, not one-time declarations, but steady, deliberate choices that align with who you say you want to be. You build integrity by doing what you said you would do. You build character by doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. You build confidence by proving to yourself, again and again, that you can trust your own commitment. This is how you become proud of yourself, through actions that reflect the kind of person you intend to be. You also become someone you're proud to love by being kind to yourself in moments of struggle. A person you're proud of is not someone who never falls. It's someone who gets back up with intention and grace. Someone who forgives themselves quickly. Someone who learns instead of judges. Someone who knows that setbacks are detours, not definitions. When you treat yourself like someone worthy of understanding and compassion, you naturally grow into a version of yourself that feels whole rather than broken. Another essential part of becoming someone you're proud to love is honoring your boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges to a healthier life. When you set boundaries, you protect your energy, your peace, your progress, and your emotional well-being. And every time you enforce a boundary, you reinforce your self-worth. You show yourself that your emotional safety matters. You show yourself that your heart deserves protection. You show yourself that you are not willing to abandon your needs to please others. This is self-love in action. Becoming someone you're proud to love also means building a life aligned with your values. If you value peace, create a peaceful routine. If you value health, make choices that nurture your body. If you value learning, feed your mind with knowledge. If you value connection, nurture relationships that uplift you. When your outer life aligns with your inner values, you experience a sense of wholeness that can't be found anywhere else. And you must remember this: the person you are becoming is not defined by your past, not defined by who others said you were, not defined by the version of yourself that walked through pain, insecurity, fear, or confusion. You are allowed to evolve beyond all of that. You are allowed to step into a new identity. You are allowed to become someone your younger self would look at and say, "Wow, we made it." The beauty of this chapter of your life is that you get to shape yourself intentionally. You get to become someone who feels proud of their choices, proud of their healing, proud of their courage, proud of their growth. Someone who looks in the mirror and sees resilience instead of regret, strength instead of shame, potential instead of limitation. And the truth is, this is the deepest form of self-love, not just loving who you are today, but shaping who you will be tomorrow. When you become someone you're proud to love, you no longer chase approval, you no longer shrink yourself, you no longer apologize for your growth. You stand tall, grounded in the life you've built, and the person you have become. You deserve to feel proud of yourself. You deserve to wake up each day, knowing you are living as someone who honors your worth. And the moment you commit to becoming that person, your life shifts, your energy shifts, your future shifts. You stop surviving, and you start living with intention, integrity, and deep unwavering self-love. Conclusion. Loving yourself more than anything else is not an event. It is not a moment of clarity or a sudden breakthrough. It is a lifelong practice, a daily decision to stand on your own side, no matter what happens. As you've moved through this journey, chapter by chapter, you've learned something essential. Self-love is built through small acts of truth, courage, compassion, and alignment repeated over time. It is not something you wait to feel. It is something you choose to embody. Throughout this audiobook, you've explored the parts of yourself that you once ignored. You've confronted the lies you believed about your worth. You've stopped abandoning yourself for approval. You've set standards and boundaries that reflect your value. You've learned to speak to yourself with gentleness, to heal wounds you've carried for years, and to release versions of yourself that no longer serve you. You've begun choosing habits that honor your future, surrounding yourself with people who respect your evolution, building a life that doesn't betray your needs, and protecting your peace as if it were the most precious thing you own, because it is. Now, you stand at a new beginning, a place where you are no longer defined by who you used to be, a place where you understand that growth is not about perfection, but about persistence, a place where you finally see that you deserve the love, respect, patience, and compassion you have always given to others. And that truth, that deep, unshakable truth, is what will carry you forward. But remember this, you will still have hard days, you will still have moments of doubt, you will still feel fear, uncertainty, exhaustion, and confusion at times. That doesn't mean you've lost progress, it means you are human. On those days, return to yourself, return to your boundaries, return to your values, return to the practices that ground you, and most importantly, return to the commitment you made, the commitment to never abandon yourself again. Self-love is not a destination you arrive at, it is a relationship you cultivate. A relationship with yourself built on honesty, respect, patience, and care. And like any relationship, it grows stronger through attention. It grows deeper through consistency. It grows richer through presence. As you step forward from here, carry this with you. You are worthy of a life that feels good on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. You are worthy of relationships that feel safe. You are worthy of peace that lasts. You are worthy of boundaries that protect you. You are worthy of a future that reflects your growth. And you are worthy of loving yourself fully, not someday, not when you fix everything, but now. This is your turning point, your invitation to live differently, to choose yourself boldly, to honor yourself daily, to become someone you're proud to love. The journey continues from here, and you are ready.